But what is the message we're spreading out into the world today? What are we talking about today? What am I doing? What am I even doing with my life? What am I talking about today? All right, I went ahead and I did all the announcements. We did the prayers. We did all of that rigmarole. And we are going to have a sermon. And I am pulling a little bit from my life. I have been very busy the last few weeks doing, I've been doing rideshare, actually. I started doing a second job as a way to make ends meet, as they say. And so it has been incredibly busy, actually. Most of the folks in UNICULT know that. And so since I've been pretty busy, I wasn't sure really how it was going to affect the what I'm doing here and what we're talking about here, and if there would be really anything for me to grab from that. Sorry. Okay. I was trying to multitask just now, and it failed spectacularly. Okay, my brain cannot handle that much stuff happening at one time. I do believe. So, gave it a shot. So, yeah, I've been doing rideshare for the last month or so, and it has been pretty interesting. It has been actually pretty enlightening for a few Unicole things, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Okay, there we go. See, if I sounded like I didn't know what I was doing for a second, it's because legitimately I was trying to set up a graphic, and it was not working out. But I believe that we have it now. Give me just a second here. Oh, no. One sec. How's everyone doing today? Just watching me stumble through trying to set up a graphic here. Nope, not what I wanted. Aha, there we go. We got it. Okay, Unimagic, thank you. You give me a good place to start from. Have I been preaching the benefit of Unicult to your fairs? Kind of. I have learned a few things, actually, and I wanted to start out with... I wanted to start with a little bit of an anecdote, because doing Cam Church for, over like a year and a half at this point, and doing, sitting here, once a month, sometimes doing backup or not, it's hard sometimes, because in Unicult we've always strived to do things in a way that is focused on all one and harm none and ethical, and a byproduct of working in these ways where we're trying to do things exactly the right way. And that's one reason why people get very confused when we call ourselves a cult, because we're not necessarily acting in the way that other cults do. And part of that is we really do strive to an amount of fairness and all one, and doing things in a way that is equitable and charitable to everyone in the group. Now, byproduct of this, for whatever reason, because this is what the universe has said, a byproduct of this is that Unicult's growth has been more of the slow and steady variety. I think one thing that people notice is we've always been here, and we have always been around, going back 11 years now. And we are, in a way, very cyclical in nature, because every 2 years or so we have a bit of media. The cult that calls itself a cult is inherently fascinating. And, we have, whether it's MTV or Vice or, print articles or podcasts, one reason that slow and steady has worked for us is that it's something that people gravitate to as something they want to talk about. But when you're in the middle, the day in, day out, the grind of doing it in a way that we have, and the abundance feels sometimes slow. And I can only speak for myself, but sometimes I sit in here and I wonder, why aren't there hundreds of people in this chat room right now? Like, make no mistake, I think the attention and the love that everyone here shares is so powerful, and I know that we're doing things in the best way that we can, and we're being rewarded infinitely all the time. But sometimes you sit back and go, why isn't there like hundreds of people in this chat room? Like, Unicult's just one of those things everyone knows about. It's one of those things that's talked about all the time. And it can just be sometimes a little confusing. Why isn't our reach, especially in something like here, church, why doesn't it equal sometimes where we all imagine that it should be or will be in the future? Because it will be in the future. But when you're in the day-to-day, it can be hard to lose sight. It can be easy to lose sight of that. And that's where I am going to share a story. Because it is too easy for me to get focused on streaming numbers or live numbers or follower counts and all these other metrics that we deem as success. And it can be easy to lose track of the amount of people that Unicult reaches on a daily basis. Millions of people have heard about Unicult, but sometimes that perspective can be obstructed just by the rigors of the day, the stressors of the moment, feeling like time is real. And so it was a couple of Sundays, I worked a couple of Sundays ago. It was early in the morning. And so I went out very early in the morning because I figured it's Sunday morning and people have places to go. A lot of people have to go to church, obviously, just like this one. But, people are doing things. It's the weekend, so I went out. And I was in my car. And my car, in essence, is kind of its own little personal reality. Oops. So I have my car here, and it is its own personal reality. And one of the really neat things about doing rideshare is you actually end up bringing in a lot of other people's personal realities into your own. Especially when considering I'm going to be sitting in this vehicle for some 8 to 12 hours sometimes. You do construct your own little personal reality with your own self-care and your own nourishment and your own ways that you cope, and you find different ways to keep yourself amused, and then every little bit some other person's reality will come into yours. And for that brief moment, we have this really neat shared reality. For that can be anywhere from 6 minutes to 15 minutes to 30 minutes. My personal reality that I've set up and this other person's reality we have set up come together and make this shared reality for us to enjoy together for just a few minutes. And I have found that incredibly enlightening. If you want to get an idea of how people are doing and get an idea of what's going on in other people's lives and generally what the emotional vibe is of the people around you, invite them into your car for very brief periods of time, and you will begin to sense emotion and energy levels, and sometimes they will talk. It is actually I always thought it was a fictional trope about the cab driver that people tell their problems to, but no, that's real. That's real. That's real. I have had people asking me for relationship advice and whatnot, and that's where the UNICULT stuff comes in, because as soon as I get asked for advice on something, which has happened for some reason, I am sure I have slipped in an all one now and then. But it was on this day just a little bit ago, and I picked someone up, and it was a priest. And so I was taking him to church, and I could see the name of the church, and it wasn't one I'm familiar with, but I'm not familiar with all the churches and the dioceses down here in the city that I live. But I figured, because when you drive around, you see we have a lot of mega churches, we have a lot of really beautiful buildings down here, so I assumed, hey, I'm going to be taking him to one of those big mega churches, the super successful churches where I don't even know how they got this built. We're sitting here in UNICULT, and we're raising money for a church, and it's going to happen, and it's going to happen a lot sooner than I think a lot of us are even imagining. But I'm going to go take him, and it's a big thing. It is this large, all-encompassing place of worship that, works for some people. And that's great. So I was just driving him, and we got to the church, and I was making these turns down just regular residential streets, and I wasn't sure 100% where I was going. But eventually we turned a corner, and he said, okay, this is it. And we stopped, and the church that I was dropping him off at was no more the size of a maybe 1,200 square foot house. And I wished him a good time. Said, have a great day. And he got out of the car, and I sat there for a second because I needed to do all the little post-ride stuff. But I looked out, and I saw him get out of the car and walk around, and he was greeted by his congregation. The congregation was 7 people. And in that moment, it felt very familiar. It felt very much the vibe of the retreats that I've been to with Unicole members. And it felt very similar to sitting here in this chat with all of you. And I sat there for a moment, and you could feel the energy of what essentially was these folks' spiritual reality that I was getting a bit of a peek into. And it kind of resonated with me because getting an outside perspective of it not really mattering in that moment how many of us are there or how big the church is. What really mattered, and the energy that I could feel of what was mattering, was the togetherness, the congregation members coming around and saying good morning to each other and saying good morning to their priest that day, and then all going inside together. That act of community and that showing of like spiritual community and solidarity, and everyone opening up the church together. And it resonated for me because that is how I have always pictured what we do in Cam Church. That's how I have always pictured what we are doing virtually, just played out in real life. It is very similar to how I imagine it will be when we have a church. And then when you look at the spiritual reality, and I'm looking at the church and I realize, well, these are some spiritual ideas that not just resonate with these people here, but they resonate with people all over. There may be 7 or 8 people here at this one particular church service, but there are probably dozens and hundreds of thousands. I think it was, a Catholic church. There are millions of people that follow Catholicism. In this particular church, there were 8 that morning. But in a spiritual reality, the energy that we take from coming to church and studying these things and interacting with our fellow churchgoers and then going out into the world, we really carry that energy with us. Not to say that we're, preaching at everyone that we meet, but in every interaction that we have as UNICULT members going into the world, whether we're doing the most mundane thing or, getting our groceries and saying hi and saying goodbye to someone and showing a kindness, or whether someone is literally asking for our advice. There are so many ways that once we leave this church, we take our spiritual energy, our bits of our shared spiritual reality, and we go out into the world and we display it to everyone, in essence. So I might have someone ask me for advice in my car, and that person is more than likely going to take that, and hopefully, they will eventually leave. They will eventually leave the car I erased part of my car. That's unfortunate. But that person will eventually leave, and let's say we did have a talk. Or maybe they didn't ask for advice on something, or maybe we didn't exchange stories with each other, but even just the vibe. And that person will go out with a little bit more of an understanding of some of the things we talk about here, and they may eventually interact with someone else. And maybe those two have a meaningful interaction. And let's use an example, all one. And maybe that energy of all one, or the idea of all one, is then given to this person in the blue. And that person goes and talks to someone else. And the topic comes up then. And so that person gets a better idea of that particular principle that we're using as our example today. And they tell it to someone else. And then, of course, all the time, I have people always coming into my car, and hopefully the personal reality I've crafted is based a lot in the calm and the teachings of UNICULT that I have found out and learned and honed over the last few years. And so hopefully that vibe gets into, gets with so many people during the day. And those people go and meet others. What I'm saying is, any of our interactions with people, whether we are just saying good morning to them, or we're saying good night, or we're hanging out with our friends group, or you're giving someone advice, or you're at your job participating in something, every single interaction is a chance for us to exemplify and spread not just these teachings, because we're not going to sit down and give everyone, we're not going to give everyone a sermon from the book. But this just isn't words in a book. It's an energy. It's a collective set of ideas of how to raise our consciousness. And it is a vibe. And everyone that we share the vibe of UNICULT to, that can be just as powerful, and that can be just as impactful, and that can be just as important. And it literally all starts from just the people in this chat room. It starts literally with the 10 or 11 people that are in here right now. And if everyone in here tells one person in the next week, oh yeah, I'm in this cool thing, it's called UNICULT, or someone says, hey, I believe that we're all one, then that's 22 people. And so that is truly a blessing. And that, I think, is one of the great powers of spiritual reality. As we cultivate it and embolden our own spiritual identity and our own faith within ourselves and bring that to others, that's how this spreads. And UNICULT will have our viral moments. We will always go viral. It is written in the sands. And we will always have attention being put out into the world. People will want to talk about us and write about us and film us. We will always be interesting in that way. But the in-between times, the ebbs and the flows, the ups and the downs, when activity in the server is really high, but also when activity in the server is chill, we are carried by our spiritual community and how we put that out into the world through our day-to-day interactions, and how we make it stronger through our day-to-day interactions with each other. Whether it's going to something like the Manifestation Mastery class, where we're all working towards, manifesting a better reality together and manifesting more abundance and learning from each other, or whether it's just saying good morning to each other and feeling that vibe and then carrying that vibe out past our Discord into the world, or you get something from interacting in the chat, and maybe you get something from the sermon, and you take that out for the rest of your Sunday. And that is how UNICULT grows. When we're going viral, and when we're not. So I thank you all for your time and attention today. Big props to the Mac equivalent of Paint for making an appearance today. And I thank you for your time and your attention and your blessings and the energy that you put into UNICULT, whether it's here in the chat or whether you put it in our server, or you're interacting on any of our social medias, or you're sitting down and maybe a friend asks you, hey, your energy has been really great lately. Why is that? What are you doing? And you say, let me tell you about UNICULT. No matter what you're doing, no matter what form that's taking, thank you, thank you, thank you. And here's to the next little bit of transformative time we're all going through. And thank you so much. Let's go ahead and say a prayer here real quick. Spirit of Uni, thank you for gathering us all here today in our beautiful virtual church. And thanks and bless everyone who is teaching and putting out there a spirituality that is rooted in all one and love and kindness and the good vibes. Let everyone take from these teachings the things that they need. Let everyone find UNICULT and make use of it in the way that best suits them. May we all work towards a better future that's focused on all one and harm none. Bless to every member of UNICULT, past, present, and future. Uni bless. Alright, church is over. If you want to hang out with cult members, you can do so by going into the Discord. We got the Discord. You can go hang out. People sometimes like to hang out after church. Starts in about 13 minutes. We call it Uni Brunch. It's just like regular brunch, except it's in the Discord with cult members. Feel free to share this video wherever you're at. Also, feel free to give us a follow on all of the social medias that I mentioned already. Here is a reminder of them. These places where you can find us. Feel free to follow us on that. Have yourself a wonderful day, and